We are live. How about that? All right. So it's good to see you, friend, on this dreary evening for another episode of the Armchair Pundits. How are you doing? Hey,
I am
Nancy
doing.
Hall's in the room. See Nancy Hall's come in the room. Nice. Yeah. So how are you doing? Let her rip. How was Thanksgiving?
It was good. It was really good. As I said earlier, I did a bunch of stuff on Wednesday night so that I could sleep in on Thursday morning, and it worked really, really well. So perhaps I will do that for Christmas too.
Yeah, just slept in, and you had all your full on turkey, macaroni and cheese, the whole thing.
Full on turkey, macaroni and cheese, mashed potatoes, collard greens, turkey, stuffing, the works.
Yum. I know. I see Deborah Brown in the room. Good to see Deborah Brown. Well, it's fun. I just drove back from Ohio. I actually left on Thursday and it was snowing like hell up in Ohio. So I had a decision to make. I can go south to 72 degrees or north to Ohio. And I went into the Northeaster and I survived it. And actually, it was kind of fun having the boots on and everything. So I just got back tonight. And I couldn't wait to see everybody in the room because we have decided to do a little bit more live. We are excited to be back in the room December 5th. And that is going to be fun because we will have on Beth Macy, who is running for Congress. And when we talk about today, why we wanted to talk about primaries is because our up and coming show on Fridays going to have Elaine Luria, Beth Macy, and we're hoping Joy Powers. Just to get the conversation started, we thought, let's talk about primaries. What are your thoughts on that? When we talk about this, it used to be like, for me, kind of confusing, the whole primary process and why we even have to go through it. And it's sort of like, is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I wanted to bring to this conversation just sort of how some everyday folks think about primaries. And I've
Right.
had an opportunity to talk to people from all different backgrounds about what they think about primaries. And it's interestingly enough that when we think about who our voters are and who our most consistent voters are, and who are the ones who are most intellectually engaged, it's the ones who always vote in primaries. But notice
Oh,
that there's also a much smaller number who vote in primaries because there is also a group who have no idea what a primary is. And they think, I voted in the primary. Does that mean that I can't vote in the next election? And then we have folks on the other end who say, why don't these folks sit down together and decide who's going to run, who the best candidate is, instead of having 10 people run for a congressional seat to be our candidate? So there you go.
well, yeah. When we're talking about Democratic primaries too, because Republicans do it much differently in Virginia, when we will see, remember when Youngkin ran in that primary when he first ran for governor, they do like this thing, like almost like a firehouse primary. It's very different than the Democratic one. We all go to our precincts and we vote. They don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's very much closed. So it's very different. So yeah, it is interesting because I've noticed like the last couple years when we've had like, for instance, my goodness, in the last primary, was it in 2020? I'm trying to think if it was 2022. I mean, just how many people ran last year? Remember when we had for Congress, like Sue Haas and in CD 10, I think there were like 11 people that ran in that primary. It was just crazy. And that was
Yeah.
just last year. I mean,
Yeah. Well, CD1 is gonna look just like that. So, the
it-
CD1 is gonna look just like that. That is the one, that has, um, Rob Whitman, and there's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
11.
7, 8, 9, 10 Democrats so far who are gonna run for that to be the candidate for CD1.
Yeah, I think we have an 11 now in that the district one. So let's talk about, we're talking about today, mostly on Virginia primaries. So we know that 2026 midterms are going to be super important. I mean, right now we are gearing up for that in Virginia and across the nation. And you can hear different people actually in different states talking about their midterm races. So in Virginia, we have 11 districts, 11, not 10, 11, right? And tonight we really wanted to focus on a few of them that are really competitive because we know CD 11, that's James Walkinshaw, pretty standard that he may have a primary. And that's true. And what we do see is that, the incumbents will face some primaries in the Democratic areas, but more than likely, Bobby Scott Jennifer McClellan in CD4. You have some standard Dom Buyer who has been primary before. He had a primary a few years ago that was pretty competitive, but we're not talking about those tonight. We're going to
Yeah.
focus on a few that we find that going to move our map to a lot more blue grabs. Now, another thing to throw in the pot here is we have redistricting. So we're going to be starting to deal with right now, as soon as possible, when the General Assembly opens, the redistricting amendment. That if we go forward with this, that will change these seats. So these primaries, this is going to be kind of confusing for about everybody. One, the redistricting on top of this. Very competitive primaries, like you said, District 1 with 11 Democrats, District 9, District 2, that Jen Kiggins is a Republican, has 9 Democrats in that primary. That's crazy. District 5, Gloria Witt ran in that a few years back, but this year they have 6 Democrats running in District 5. And these are seats we would like to turn blue, by the way, and that's why we're talking about them tonight. District 6, we're going to focus a lot on that tonight. That is Ben Klein's seat. That has just 3 Dems. It's real manageable. We're going to talk
Yeah.
more about that one. District 9 is kind of interesting. District 9 is a tough district. It's out there in rural red, huge swath of it just looks like so hard to flip. But we have to remember that used to be held by a Democrat out there. A lot of the area had actually Democrat representatives. So it's kind of interesting to see the turn. But already we have 4 candidates, and that's interesting to me. Sometimes we have to beg people to run, right? We have 4. Brandy Hall, Adam Murphy, Joy Powers, and Brandon Cook. Oh, that's another Republican. Sorry. 3. 3 Democrats running. That to me signals something is going on in these primaries. Either the redistricting is getting people interested that they can have a possibility of running, but I think this is the first time I've seen in really red districts that haven't flipped blue that we have
Yeah.
a lot of interest. What's your point? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that if there was ever a time to flip seats or have a win where at least
Right.
you move the margins in a way that cause people to pay attention, that's going to be really important. But why don't we go through some of them and let's talk about the ones that you want to talk about. You want to do that? So
Yeah,
let's start.
I do.
Well, let's start with CD1, which I'm really excited about. It's a lean Republican district, and it is there's a as you said, there's a whole bunch of people running, Democrats who are running, and I don't know any of them except
Are you
for
serious? Really?
yeah, I'm not except for Shannon Taylor.
Yeah,
Shannon Taylor is the only one that I know because she ran for attorney general. And so
that's it.
she has really strong name recognition. And so far, she's the one who's raised the most money for this race. So she's already going to work. The other ones, there are a couple here who haven't raised a single penny. And so I think that will be telling as they go forward in this race. And I will tell you that I've always had this thing about primaries where I thought that there are some times where it's just a complete waste of time and energy. And I'm sort of like the lady who said, "Why don't these folks just sit down and figure out who the best candidate is?" And let me tell you why I say that. It's really important to have a primary so that you understand where people stand, so that you don't get someone there and you go,
Right.
geez, I had no idea that this person did that. But you can still have a primary, as we found out in the attorney general's race, and still find out things later on. So they're not always going to tell you what you need to know. But I can tell you, I like Shannon Taylor a lot. So it will be interesting to figure out which one of these candidates that we learn about that we like more than Shannon, who was an
Yeah.
attorney and a prosecutor. And she ran a damn good race for attorney
Yeah.
general. So I think she has a lot of popularity there. And I think she's brave and will probably say some things that need to be said.
Well, yeah. Well, let's talk about the Republican in that race. So CD1 is down in the northern neck is real red area. There are some Northern Virginia people have second homes down that area. We've tried to take that area the last couple times. I mean, we started as Network Nova helping candidates run. And I'm going to tell you back so many years ago, and we started this in 2018, Vanjie Williams ran in 2018. No one else wanted to run. It was really hard to find somebody to stand up because in that district, it was pretty damn tough to try to make some headway there. But they redistricted it. And now, when Leslie Meta ran last year, it definitely had more movement, in it because it had more potential. Because they actually gave a lot of those seats were divided with CD2, where Elaine Luria lost by just a few percents because they redistricted her seat too down there in the Virginia Beach area. So going down to one, you have
So
Rob Whitman. Let me just
yeah.
finish. We have Rob Whitman, who does nothing for nobody down there. Okay. And what I wanted to talk to you about when we talk about primaries, you brought up a few good points about that. One, you just distinguish the points of view of Democrats. You have a lot of people getting the message out. When you have too many, it feels diluted. You can't
Mhm,
really have a good debate. You would like to see 3 or 4, but 11's almost freaking ridiculous. And
mhm.
it's just sort of crazy. Um, but I think it brings out what I'm seeing here is a lot of exciting movement, though, that I have never seen before. So I think it may be because of redistricting, number one. And I think when Rob Whitman, and what I'd like to talk to you about, you had a good point, is how we're going to fight in these districts, even in the primaries and the general, and making sure people know that these Republicans are doing nothing for these areas that they live in, nothing. And we need to make sure that we run tough, right? Not this, like little baby stuff. They were like, well, like you know what I mean? Like, you want to win. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is what I find really interesting about CD1. I didn't do this for all of them, but in 22, Herb,
Herb
what's
Jones.
Herb Jones, feature Herb
Right.
Jones ran, and it was 56.76 to 42.28 and 22. Now, I
Right.
will say in 24, it
When
was
Leslie ran.
when Leslie ran, it was still
Yes.
56.31 versus
She did not miss
43.53.
the number. Right.
No,
She didn't miss the
no,
number.
no, but you don't know where those numbers came from. And interestingly enough, what
Mm.
I think is that
Wait,
now
you got a frog in there.
I do.
I'm laughing. I just want to tell everybody. Fennell has a frog in there. Well, it's because she ate a turkey. It.
No, this is my sexy voice.
I'm sorry
So
to
what
interrupt you. I'm gonna laugh
what I'm
though.
saying is that this is the opportunity to do something different.
Yes.
So we can see that running the same kind of race here didn't do anything. And so the question
Right.
is, are we going to run the same kind of race where we go into this red area and don't call out who the Republicans are and who they're working for? And we tend to go into these places and say, oh, I can work across the aisle and I can do this and blah, 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 blah. But you never call out the monsters that are keeping you down. You never
Yes.
really tell the truth about who's actually helping put food on your table and who's not. You never call them out to their face because we won't even call their names. And my point is that I'd like to
Right.
see the candidates go in and recognize that doing what you did in 22 and 24 isn't going to work. What are you going to do different? And that's what I'd like to hear them talk about in their primary.
Right. And I think there's something to be said also. What you brought up at the beginning was what voters that participate in the primary. I know that when we won't want to get into detail here, but I'd like to do it on the Friday Power Lunch is ranked choice voting. When you have so many, there's different ways to look at the primaries and how we can how we can vote for them. And will the bet, my worry is when we talk about the good and bad of primaries, are we getting the best candidate? And I could tell you that when we have a lot in some of these races, I did not feel like we got the best candidate. And it's because sometimes you just have the votes being diluted, and sometimes it's just, there needs to be sometimes you may get a person that fits the district even better when you do some ranked choice voting, or you just have um, primaries just sort of bring out sometimes more like more extreme sides of things. People that really want to vote in primaries are more sort of like really issue focused, more like you said, motivated. So maybe there's a little bit of interesting things to talk about primaries, how we do how the choosing happens and do the best people win. I mean, that we can go on all night about that. But in District 1, Rob Whitman, I have dealt with him. He talks like a nice guy, but he doesn't do shit for anybody. And I think when I look at these 11 Democrats running, I know a few. Tim Sinwinski, Sierra Club. I know Tim. He's been at the Women's Summit. Nice guy. I mean, not a smart freaking, a wonderful man to listen to, especially about climate. He knows everything about data centers. This is a really great, up and coming person, first time getting his name on the ballot. I think that's kind of exciting in primaries when you can do that. Again, there's so many on here. And then I see Amanda Pohl. Now, Amanda Pohl is running in one. You remember Amanda wanted to run for DPA chair. I know her name a little bit. And you go down and I see the only other person that really raised a lot of money, Lisa Khanna. She has raised a lot of money and probably would be competitive in that race. But I only see 3 or 4 that maybe actually they're competitive overall. But I think tonight our goal here is not to really say who's going to win, but are they good? Are they bad? How do we make them better? And what the purpose of really getting at the Democratic message, that potential, right? So we can move on to CD2. What do you got to say about CD2? And that's down in Virginia Beach, and that's your area.
Yeah, this is my area. And so Jen Kiggins is the Republican who sits there now. And I think she's getting very, very nervous. And so
Okay.
we have a bunch of folks who are running one, two, three, four, five, six,
7,
seven,
9.
counting Elaine, who just put her name back in the hat. And I can't tell you how excited people were to do that,
Oh, yeah.
to have her do that. And I think this is one of the places where I saw something happen that I think was pretty amazing. One of the candidates here, Mike Williamson, who's raised money and who's been doing a really good job, and people have been really liking him a lot. When Elaine put her name in, he said, "Hey, I'm withdrawing. This election is too important. I think Elaine is a great candidate, and so I am
Good
withdrawing my name and putting my support behind Elaine, and I would advise the rest to do the same." Well, the same day he did that, someone else got into the race, and so this is one of those cases where this is not a person who is not known. Elaine Luria was in the Congress from 2019 to 2023. She got all kinds of awards while she was there. She served on so many boards. She just did so much work. She was bipartisan, one of those folks who was truly bipartisan, and she was the most effective freshman while she was there, her first term. So she's 20 years in the Navy. This woman knows what she's doing. She's been there before. She served on the J6. So it's not like this isn't a known commodity. So this is one of those times where I think some of these folks maybe should think about stepping aside and letting us get to work right away on Jane Kiggins, is my view on that.
I noticed that Jen Kiggins has a Republican opponent already, which is good for her. So she will run a primary, which will actually be good for Jen Kiggins. So I'm sure that Jen Kiggins will win that. And let's just say, going back to 2018, for those listening in, when we got involved in this Network Nova, we leaned in after 2017, started to do some work around congressional races. Elaine Luria, Jennifer Wexton, who won in congressional seat 10, Abigail Spanberger won in CD7. These were our three blue wins that we just flipped blue. So exciting. And I think what's cool about this time around, we have a chance to take back Congressional District 2. Again, that's Virginia Beach area. And we see Elaine Luria coming back. I call it the mermaid is back. You know, Elaine came back. She served her country. She really worked on the January 6th committee. When they redistricted, it really hurt her. And actually, the MAGA was just kind of wild that year. And she had if you know Virginia Beach, it is full of just crazy. It's a lot of MAGA. There are MAGA down there. And it is the first time I've ever seen Trump signs where people were proud to put in their yards. She had a tough year. And, if you go back to 22, she came in at 48%. And when Missy ran last year and last in 24, she was below. She only came in at almost 45, a few points below. But remember, it's redistricted. So, we are dealing with the redistricting of CD2. But even with redistricting, what we're finding is we can win this seat. There are a lot of potential in there. But again, we have 8 Democratic candidates. And, if Elaine doesn't have to do a lot in it's good to have a primary. Again, having 11 or 10, I don't know where that gets us. That's the part
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
think people just want to get name recognition. Like you said, we'll see who raises money, around that. But it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, this is what I'll say is as far as raising money, I think that folks are going to have a difficult time raising money now that Elaine is back. She was really
That's
well
true.
liked by lots of people. If they had to put bets on who they think could win this race, they would probably put them on her. And I would say she's a proven leader. She just is. excuse me, and so
She's gonna be on the show on Friday, which will be cool to see her. And some people have criticized her because she left and they want to know, like, oh, where the hell was she? I know I had some of the thoughts were more like, okay, what, um, we when somebody does leave, you like to see them active in that. But what you find out is her personal life. There was a lot going on there. There was a death in the family. There were different kind of things going on, and she really needed time to turn that attention. And January 6th, people were after her and it was really a rough time. And so I think what I see in her is this sort of little bit of a break, and she's come out hard. I've liked what I've seen. She's talking tough, which I want to see. And she actually is already showing up everywhere. What's your thought when you're down there? Are you already seeing something different in her or what?
yeah, I was really excited. She came to our committee meeting, and people were curious. They wanted to know where she was, and she was very
Yeah.
upfront about it. She said, "I had a death in the family. It was like a young son-in-law who passed
Yes.
away with 2 kids." That is really tough, and her family
Yeah.
really leaned into that family, and then her father passed away, and so that's a lot, and so I think that sometimes people don't understand what's happening in folks' life, like you said, and they're hard on them, but she knew what had to come first, and it was her family. And now that things are back in line, I think she is ready to come back and serve the country again like she did before. And I think people will give her the grace
Right.
for that.
Well, and like I said, when we talk about primaries and Network Nova, what we've never done is endorsed in primaries. And because we always want to be able, when we have our Women's Summit and different events, that we feel like we want to be there for everybody and uplift everybody and not sit on here and give preference so on. I also think that's not to say that that has changed because that's really still what we do. We do endorse through National Women's Political Caucus, supporting women candidates and all that. But I think it's okay to talk about it. What I like is that if Elaine, what I want her to see is debate. I think really seeing if how she has improved even in that space, why primaries are good, that I really believe it brings you a better candidate. Again, I'll just say 12 people in. It's when I had to do a moderation up here when we had a special election for Congress. When you're moderating with 10 people, you don't get to hear anything. And it really does dilutes the conversation for the voter. And I think voters are the most people that kind of lose out because it becomes an inside game sometimes. And it's really like who you know, and like we talked about that, your friend Amy Roma ran up here. Great candidate. She ran against James Walkinshaw. There were 10 people or 8 people on the stage. You don't get to really know anybody. There's not enough time, right? Too many
Yeah.
people. I don't know how you limit that. If it should be that if you can't raise a certain amount of money or you can't do something, it could be something like that. But this is a little bit getting a little bit crazy when you have this many.
Yeah. You remember, though, when all the Republicans were running, you're right, they had to raise a certain amount of money. And I don't like the money to be the issue because
That's
people
true.
hate raising money. I know when I ran, I hated raising money.
Yeah,
But
right.
the point is that you have to show that you're invested. But I also think that this is such a serious time. This is that we all should be
Right.
trying to figure out how do we save our resources? How do we not tire out our people? How do we not just make it hard and confusing? And I do think that it comes down to personal responsibility for folks to determine, am I really serious about this seat? Now that I see other people have entered, is it really in my best interest and the best interest of the constituents to stay in this race? And I think when you have 11 people, you know that 10 of
Yeah.
you ain't going to make it. So, and we can
Right.
probably peel those off ourselves. And so just do us a favor and just get down to a manageable number.
Well, I'm going to say a little insight when I think about the race out. When Jennifer Wexton obviously is ill and then had to step down from her seat, we had that election. There was at least 11 people running. You don't see hardly maybe a few out of them, 11. They just disappeared and you never see them again. You wonder, are they helping in this race and that race? They kind of just absorb back in. I like to see when people do come back over and over if they're really a great candidate. We saw that in the delegate race. We saw candidates come back again, work, work, work. You have to work. You have to be out there talking to people. And then I think really it does deliver for that person. What I do think that's interesting about these seats, though, these are seats that are red and they haven't had this much interest. So again, it kind of is exciting that there's this interest. Let's go to CD. Let's go to number 5. District 5 is really interesting. Denver Riggleman, who's come on our show before, was the congressman in District 5. Then it was a real shit show. If anybody was paying attention between John McGuire and Bob Good. Bob
Mhm.
Good is running again, everybody.
So did he
Republican Bob
decide to
Good.
do it?
Yeah. Oh, he's on here. I mean, he made primary. John McGuire. It's kind of interesting, but this particular 6 Democrats that I see, we see a retired Army veteran, Paul Riley. We see another Navy vet, lawyer, Mike Pruitt, right? Katie Zabriskie, business person, wants to fix things. You see this Katie, don't know her, but I love that somebody's in the race that has a little bit of the business background. Adele Stitchell, a lawyer, social justice, had a lot to do around with the white supremacists in some of her
Mhm.
work.
Yep.
Family physician, Susan Karanzowski. That's a big name. She's been around in Central Virginia for 20 years. And then this Rob Transitsky, another Zitsky. We have a lot of Zitskys out there. Must be a lot of like my husband, a lot of the Polish Czech people out there in CD5. Maybe some good kolache going on out there. But he is a philosopher, a writer, and a lecturer. So look at that. That's a kind of a rich race there of people that you and I have never heard of, right?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to get to Beth Macy, but what I will say about this
Yeah.
CD5 is that hopefully the 2 Republicans just beat themselves up good and fashion, and then that'll be good.
I think I'm in for that one. CD5, if we can have Bob Good and John McGuire have like sort of maybe President Trump could put one of those like wrestling things together and they can get in the ring, that would be good. But I do actually think that can bring out, and I think our point is with this potential with primaries, good or bad, is if these Democrats running and their messaging, and they really, really point out, especially with the healthcare issue. Virginia, we lost a lot of jobs. What Republicans have done, decimated some of the areas of Virginia. There's a real opportunity that people start to turn on Republicans and stop voting for them. Let's talk about that now that we go to CD6, because CD6 is Beth Macy, Pete Barlow, and Ken Mitchell, who's run before. We know Ken. We like Ken. He's an Army veteran. We have Pete Barlow, retired. He lost his job. I think Pete Barlow is a federal worker, if I remember. And then we have Beth Macy come into it, and a wowza kind of a person that brings a lot of attention to an area that didn't get so much attention.
Yeah, so this is gonna be the best story ever, so I hope that folks will join the Friday Power Lunch to hear us actually
I
have a
bet.
conversation with Beth Macy, who is the author of 3 best-selling books, what is it?
Paper
Paper
Girl,
Girl,
and then her
Dope
Dope
Stick,
Stick,
and
Dope Stick.
Factory Man.
Yes,
So 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 she's best-selling author who grew up, in this area. She grew up very poor, but that's not the point I wanna talk about. What I wanna talk about is her kickoff. So she has a kickoff to come out to say that she's running for Congress. It is
right.
standing room only, in this building where she has the kickoff, and it is rousing. And when I say rousing, I mean she takes Ben Klein to task. She talks about him, who he stands for, the policies, the things that he's voted for, and she calls it out in ways that has the crowd roaring. And what I love is it's the first time that someone who actually has come out to say, I'm not going to do business as usual. I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to be really clear and deliberate about what you guys are doing to hurt the people in this district. And I love that because usually everybody is just like mamsy pamsy, blah, blah, blah. But
And
she is
for the
loud.
voting.
She is loud and she is clearly articulating what is happening. And I think that it's high time that in these red areas that people start to call out the harm that these Republican legislatures are doing. And they're doing absolutely nothing. And she is calling that out very early. So it's very exciting to
Yeah.
me.
So I think this is really ripe, ripe, ripe. And why I'm saying it is when you look at Ben Klein, Rob Whitman, a couple of these people sitting in these seats, again, doing nothing. Rural hospitals are closing. Reality is sinking in the sense of even hunger in areas. We're talking maternal care. We're talking the decimation of the education department. People are seeing it. Reality bites, as you said. It's biting people in the ass. And these people have been hounded by the grassroots group on the ground. So we have something kind of cool happening in Roanoke area, where Beth Macy has announced she actually was, I think, worked at the Roanoke paper there for years, and they've already set the stage. They protest all the time against Ben Klein because he has absolutely delivered nothing, and it's been sort of, a galvanizing episode. In the even the bridge brigades, people are really, really hammering on these people. So this contest, I think it's gonna be really exciting because you have Pete Barlow, you have Ken Mitchell, who's run before. We know Ken, like I said, and you have Beth Macy, who's got a lot of people excited in the Roanoke area. She's well known, dope sick, really covered what the opiate crisis had done to her hometown and areas around, and the pharma, big pharma. So her background of this is amazing. Beth Macy is really lives and breathes her hometown and understands who's taking advantage of who. And I feel like it's going to bring so much attention to this. And I think more and more people that are even Republicans and independents sitting there are going to say, you know, like, who am I? What am I
That's right.
doing voting for this? Let's wrap up with the who am I part. When people
Yeah,
start to really look in the mirror
yeah,
and say, first of all,
yeah,
this guy's been lying to me. Secondly, I'm voting against myself. Maybe it's
yeah,
time I change my vote.
yeah. I think that that's what Beth Macy is clearly gonna do. However intentional she does it, she will be looking at people to say, how on earth can you vote for someone who disrespects you in this way?
Yes,
How can
right,
you vote for someone who doesn't allow you to put the food on the table that you need to have, get the health care that you need? And she's going to make people question what they're doing so that if you did vote for this person, that you're going to look like someone who is not thinking clearly about your life and your family. And I want to read this quote to you because what she does is she calls Ben Klein bad for the working class voters in the district, and she even said that he was a useful idiot. Now, who wants to vote for an idiot? Nobody. And she's going to tell you why he's an idiot. But here's what they said. The
right.
crowd roared. This was one of the more energetic campaign entry speaks that I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot. It was so positively most direct assault on the incumbent I have heard in a long time, maybe ever. Klein did not reply to an invitation to comment. So I'm just saying, when you call them out for who they are, it will be
Yeah.
very clear.
Well, I think the money that's going to come in, I think we're going to see really a lot of energy around that. In the sense of the primaries, again, I think it's going to be good that we do have a primary. I think it'd be interesting to see. And what I think you're saying too is that in some of these areas, we have to take the gloves off. I mean, it's really going strong, really calling it out. And I think it kind of jives really well with the grassroots underpinning who has been saying this, showing up in town halls. I mean, they themselves have been protesting them because really there's a lot of pain in this area. And Ben Klein, Rob Whitman, these dudes that have been sitting in these seats really don't deserve to be there. And I think 2026, it's going to lend itself that this Virginia could actually get more, you know, we can flip a few seats. And if they redistrict, and I don't know if they're doing just like one, two, or what, if we do put that on the ballot, how all that will impact a few of these districts, or, if they're really even redistricting 9. And I just want to say one thing about 9 is that we do have three candidates in 9 as well: Brandy Hall, Adam Murphy, and Joy Powers. What I like about Joy Powers is she ran for delegate. She's a farmer, she's local, tough area, but she already has some name recognition. Joy Powers, she's a great candidate. I'm going to have my eye on her. And I know there's some, like two other people running in that one. But again, we used to have, when Karen, who ran, and that was Karen, I want to say Karen Peters, but Karen Baker ran in CD9, and really no one else wanted to step up. So the parties, this primary thing is kind of interesting. Um, I can only say that I don't think I've ever seen a year quite like this in Virginia, with so many people in these primaries that you couldn't get. You'd have to ask uh, your dog if they're interested in running, because everybody's like, no, hell no. I'm not getting beat up. I'm not doing that. It's
Yeah,
awful. And you know how big it is when you have to travel all across some of those districts. It's huge. So, you
yeah.
know,
I know we're at our 30 minutes,
yeah,
but
we
but
are.
what I'll
Yeah.
what what I'll say is that this is probably the perfect time, And what I would say that I wish for all folks in the primary and when they make it to the general is that recognizing that in these districts where you've gotten 40% of the vote or 20% of the vote, that doing what you've always done is not going to be the answer. That you'll have to do what you've
Right.
always done, but you'll have to be very clear about who the monsters are and what they deliver to you and how they harm you. And you have to make it very clear so that people will understand what they're voting for. And then if you want to vote for that, you will know that you're voting, and I'm not even going to say against your interest, but you're voting against someone who just doesn't care about you at all. And that is a very different thing than voting against your interests.
Yeah. That useful idiot just may be a t-shirt. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying that one thing. I'll just say that when I heard that she was running, and I actually got to talk to Beth one day, she's tough. She's somebody that she's super tough, and I just feel like that her voice in that Roanoke area, she's really well loved and well known, and I think that brings that kind of name recognition right away. That's really sort of important. But no, very exciting. So I want to say to everybody, I'm so glad you're in the room with us tonight. Getting back from the holidays, it's it's kind of been nice to come back to some sunlight today, but it's glad to be out of the snow at least. We will be back with our show this Friday, kicking off at noon, and we will have Elaine Luria live, and we should have some really good questions for Elaine. So we do a little hard hitting interview with Elaine, see what our mermaid friend is doing, and I have a whole box of mermaids that we can paint if she does win that primary, and also we'll have on, which I'm very excited, Beth Macy. And get to talk to her. That's going to be very exciting. And I still am waiting to hear back from Joy Powers. And I want to talk about the Democratic reorg. And maybe we'll talk a little bit on that Friday. Um, that's really important. It's coming up. A lot of people are absorbed into they're doing all the elections and blah, blah, blah. But maybe we'll talk on that a little bit. Anything else on your mind for this Friday? Or
Oh, nope. Nope. I'm just happy that we had a chance to chat tonight.
I know I'm so glad I got to see you and Hershey. And Hershey's there. Fennell's dog is Hershey. Did he leave? Did you have some turkey bones downstairs or
Yeah,
what?
I sent him away. So
Okay, so I hope we can do this more and more, and then get to see everybody. I'm so glad people tuned in. And again, we'll see people on Friday. And then remember our Ho 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 show, December 12th. We're going to have Leah Greenberg, Indivisible, David Pepper Perspectives, and lastly, our girlfriend,
Rachel
Rach
Bettercocker.
Bidwell. That'd be good. Okay, we'll go. You go relax, and goodbye, everybody. It's great to see everybody in the room.